Welcome to the Sending Your Senior podcast. My name is Clay Carino, and I have the privilege of serving as the college pastor here at Biltmore Church. And our hope for this podcast is to help equip parents to navigate some of the nuances and challenges that come along with sending your senior into the next season of life. And I'm so excited. I have Art and Shelly Snead with me here. Thank you guys so much for being on with this. I would love if you guys would just talk a little bit about kind of who you are, what you do for a living, how many kids you have, what are their ages now, just to help us get to know you a little bit.
Yeah, so we're the Sneads. My name's Art, as you said, and I serve out at Ridgecrest Foundation. We do Ridgecrest Conference Center, host Christian events throughout the year. Also have summer camps that we run as well. And we have 4 kids. I'll name them, and then you can describe them if that's all right. Yeah, so we've got 3 boys. Silas, 22, Josiah's 19, Sam is 18, and then our daughter Camara is 17. So,
yeah, and I'm Shelly. I'm their mom, and I was mainly a stay-home mom, did some part-time work, and now I'm doing some writing and speaking and hosting a podcast. And our oldest, who's 22, did the 4-year off to a university in another state plan, and then lived at home for a year while he was doing an internship. And then our next kid, who's 19, graduated from high school early even, and just college wasn't for him, or at least at this point. So he is working and pursuing a hobby to see if he can turn that into a career. And our 18-year-old is about to graduate from high school, still figuring out what he wants to do, maybe looking at technical college in the fall. And then our daughter that just completed her GED because traditional school is not her thing, and is about to start cosmetology school. So very different. And I'll throw this out there too, just because every child is unique. But we had 2 that were biological kids, 2 that were adopted. We had some medical trauma, some developmental trauma, some just learning disability. We kind of had a whole mix of stuff that made it never a dull moment.
Yeah, you guys have kind of experienced a lot of different versions of this kind of sending them out, but also you're still in the season too of preparing to kind of send them out. So
right.
A lot of what we talked about in the last episode was just kind of the heart of the parent. Answering this question of what now? The relationship dynamics have changed. You have protected them, clothed them, looked out for them for the better part of 18 years, and now there's a shift kind of that happens. And now I would love if you guys would just speak a little bit to kind of what were some of the thoughts, feelings, what was it like for those who you have kind of set off? What did that feel like for you guys?
yeah, I think for me, I expected it. I've grown up expecting it would happen just like it did for me. And one of the things that I've learned is that we live in a different world now. And I know that's an obvious thing, but it's so true. Both of us went off to college and kind of did that thing in the graduate school and came back. From the time I left high school, I never moved back into my house. I mean, I would come home and visit, but was always away during the summer working and stuff. And so that's just kind of what I pictured in my head that it looks like. And man, it just looks very, very different for different people and certainly even for our kids. So,
sure.
Shirley, what about you?
For me, it kind of evolved into this stage where all of a sudden I started thinking of all the things I didn't do right. So for me, the feelings were, here's what I did right. I mean, this even hit me when my kids were in high school. I remember thinking, I don't want to read another parenting book because it's too late. If I don't want to hear what I should have been doing and didn't do. So it was that kind of almost feeling like, and I imagine a lot of parents feel that way of just, oh my gosh, it's here. And here's the long list of stuff everybody says you should do, and so it was that kind of a feeling for me. It was bittersweet, really.
Were there any scriptures or truths or just things that you were kind of clinging to during that season? Because there's there's the leading up to, as you were kind of mentioning, and then there's this transition has happened, but then there's also the wave after. Was there what was that processing like with you guys, as far as were there truths or scriptures, things that you were kind of like holding on to that were really helpful for you that might encourage some of the parents going through it?
Yeah, I think one of them that comes to mind is from Proverbs 22, where it talks about train up a child in the way he should go, and when he's old, he won't depart from it. And I know for a long time when I read that, I was thinking the way he should go, almost as a, what do I want him to do? What did I do after I got done with this? What was the next stage? And heard a pastor talk about, that word for should is really has more to do with how are they wired? How did God create them? And what are the gifts that they have? What are the interests that they have? And those things could be very, very different from me, and have been. So that's one that comes to mind for me. What about you?
Yeah, for me, it's more of just remembering that whatever I feel like I didn't do right in all that time, or maybe I didn't prepare them the way I should, or I didn't do it the way this family did it, or this couple did it, which is so easy, comparison is so easy to do. But just remembering that God is ultimately the one who is guiding them, who is that, they're accountable for themselves before him, and just remembering he can do immeasurably all than I could ask or imagine, that he's all about redemption and restoration. That's the story of the gospel, and that's what he wants to do in my kids' lives. So just remembering that my hope is not in my intentionality or how intentional I was, even though that's very important.
Yeah.
My hope is in what Christ and Jesus Christ and what he's going to do in their lives. And just that takes a lot of pressure off of me, and gives a lot of grace and room for God to do whatever he wants to do in their lives.
Yeah, I think that's so good. One of the things that we were talking about in the last episode was this shift that happens when you're a parent, that you raised them, you clothed them, you took care of the child for 18 years. And then there's this shift that kind of happens when they're seniors and they're going to go off onto the next thing. And we called it control to coach. And I would love if you guys would talk about just kind of what that looked like for you, because you guys have experienced a lot of different versions of sending your senior. And so I would love if you guys would talk about kind of what that looked like for college versus the workplace, and how did you navigate those spaces? What did you find to be helpful?
Yeah, that's a great question. I wish we knowed more about on the front end. I think that for us, we've tried along the way, well before their senior year, how do we shift from more of the control into the coaching aspect? I think if you wait and you do all of control and then you flip a switch and go to all to coach, that typically is not gonna go very well. And so we tried to do that for each one, again, at different paces as they were ready for that along the way. One of the things that I've thought of with our son that's really exploring a hobby and how could he turn that into a career and didn't feel like college was the right thing for him, was just the coaching him to, just try something, commit to something. Look at this as a season where you can grow, not just maybe, on the intellectual side, but on the spiritual side. How can you grow in your knowledge of something that you are passionate about and explore? And Gen Z, one of the things that is true about Gen Z that I've heard people say is that they've grown up in this age of infinite browsing. Mm. And because of that, because of all the possibilities, it can be hard to just commit sometimes. And to realize that if I commit now to this, it doesn't mean I'm committing now to this for the rest of my life. That I'm going to try this. And if this is right, then I'm going to keep going. And if this is not what I want to do at some point, then that's okay. And I can pick up and trust that God's big enough to fix that along the way with those decisions.
Yeah, I think in some ways it was easier with the kid that went off to college, because there's a sense in where they're living under your roof, they're your kid. They're at college, you're distance, they're making their own decisions. I don't know what time he's coming home at night. I don't know what he's doing in his free time. And he's getting that experience of getting to totally be independent. And so that's been a hard, there was a little bit of a hardship there, because when you come home for the summer, we had to have some conversations, and I challenge you to have these conversations. We kind of had to learn the hard way. When he came back home, I was like, here's a kid under my roof again. He was feeling like, I just spent the last 9 months proving I'm an adult and I can make it without you. So it was kind of like we had to find this place where, okay, since you're in our home, just as a courtesy, why don't we communicate where you're going to be, those kinds of things, and your responsibilities at the home, since we're providing for you this summer or whatever. And then, so having them home, and you're wanting them to be independent, but they're still at home, and you don't really shift in your mind because there's still a kid here at home. That just had its own set of things we've had to work through and learn. And, we kind of came to a place where we were like, because you're living in our home, here's what we value. And so it's going to be important to us that you value them too, or that you're, going to church, the different things he said about pursuing interests and working and those kinds of things. So communication is the key. You have to have conversations, and I think we're learning you have to keep coming back and having those conversations. Yeah. And it's, I want to point out too, it's a whole new step in your marriage, because we are having to, not only are we having to communicate well with these kids and help them figure out, on their own, what's their next direction. I have an idea of what that should look like, and he has an idea with that. I have an idea of what my involvement should be, and he has an idea of what my involvement should be, or his involvement should be. So I love Jim Burns, who wrote an amazing book called Doing Life with Your Adult Children, but he says it's a dance that no one knows the steps to. And you just have to remember that and give each other grace. Like, he and I are trying to do this dance with different steps in mind, and so is our child. Mm-hmm. So just give each other grace and communicate, because none of us know the steps to this dance. It's a whole new thing.
And one of the biggest things for me, and we talked with our second son about this when he said, hey, I'm not going off to school, I want to work and explore some other things, was we just want this to be a time of growth for you. We want this to be a period of development, right? When I went off to college, that was a time of great development and growth, and I learned a lot about myself. You don't have to go to college to do that.
Sure.
But we want you growing in some way. We want you to explore some different things and learn more about yourself and learn more about life and others. And so that's important, is that growth and development. God can use this time, no matter what you're doing, to prepare you for what he wants for you next.
Yeah, I think that's so good. And something both of you kind of hinted at was this, when you're home for the summer, I think that's such a real tension that exists. I felt it when I was kind of in college and would come back home, and you said it so well. Like, I have been on my own doing this thing, and both parties have kind of learned what that looks like. And then you come home, and it changes again a little bit, and you can feel the unresolved tension of that shift, where maybe some old habits creep back in, or some old expectations, or unmet expectations, whatever that looks like. So I would love if you guys would just dig a little bit more into what were some of the practical things or even conversations that were had. Like, how did you do that? How did you create a space where you were able to kind of have those conversations? Because I think that'd be so helpful for parents just to kind of start thinking about how to do that.
Yeah. Well, I will start off by saying our child made that easy, because he just is a great communicator with us. So he would say, okay, this is how I'm feeling. And because I don't think I even realized that there was any tension, because your mama brain never really turns off. You just think, here's my kid who's home, so I'm going to give him trash duty today, and I'm going to wonder where he is at 11 p.m. And so I appreciate it. But, some of our other kids aren't the talkers that he is. So just, now I'm realizing we need to have those, you have to bring up those conversations.
Yeah, one of the big thing was, like, I remember you asking, or me maybe asking, what time are you going to be home tonight? And this weird thought of, we haven't known what time you've been home on any night for the last 9 months.
Yeah.
And so what we kind of had to do was explain to him, for us, this is our home, and as long as we know, then we're okay with it. But for us to be able to relax at night and know, hey, everyone under our roof is safe and taken care of, it's more that. It's not so much you need to be home at this time, but just us being aware of that because you're here.
Right.
And it just helps put our mind at peace. And I think that helped him understand.
And I think you phrased it to him as it's more of a courtesy to us. It's
a way to honor and respect.
Right.
Each part.
Yeah.
Right? Yep.
So it's, kind of, knowing how many people to prepare a meal for at dinner. It's little things like that, and he's been on his own for dinner for the last 9 months. So he's, he may not be thinking of those things. So
when you guys, having children that kind of taken different paths of next steps after high school, between living at home versus moving out, did you guys feel any different tensions there? Anything that you would kind of encourage parents with, just practically, of how did you navigate? You're still home, but you're kind of like, we want you to be like on your own, doing your own thing. Like, how did you guys handle that?
Again, we're in the middle of it. So.
can we get back to you in a few years?
We'll do this again.
Now, it'll change at that time for the next generation.
Yeah.
It's just kind of what are our expectations, but it's also asking them, what is it you want to accomplish with this time? Like, it's okay. I don't need you to tell me what you're going to be doing 3 months from now, 6 months from now, a year from now. But we do want you to have a plan to where you're learning and growing and exploring and building community with people and seeing what God's going to be doing in your life. I am a decision person in my head. I would love to say to each of my kids, I really would like to know what you're doing 3 months from now. I mean, really, lay that out for me. But that's just not realistic. And so we've talked, a word that we've used some is stuck. We don't want them to get stuck. Doesn't mean they have to know everything about what they're going to be doing, but again, how are you being intentional with this time? I guess not just drifting, but intentionality with this time.
Sure. And this is a great time when they are home to help them with practical things. So they can, as they're thinking about moving out one day. So, it's a great time to help them with budgeting and, think practical things, because you don't want them to live at your home forever, but you want to maximize the time that they are home for further discipleship. So whatever that is going to look like.
Yeah, I've had conversations with even our two youngest, and I've said, one thing that we can agree on is that we want you to reach a point where you're going out and you're living in your own place and doing your own thing.
We want you to be independent.
We want that. Where do you feel like you're ready to do that? Where do you feel like you're not ready to do that? And the budgeting is a great example with one of our children. And he kind of found himself in a place where he was like, ooh, I kind of messed this up. And it's just a teaching moment. These are the kind of things when you're not with us that we got to help you figure out. And I think that helped open him up to knowing that we're on the same side as far as goal. Now, we may disagree on how to get there, but that's just part of parenting, right? But we want to get there.
And I think we've both come to a place where we realize there's not an age where your kid becomes an adult and your kid becomes independent. It is different for every kid. It may be different for a kid month to month. And so we're finally learning that, to let those expectations be fluid even for wherever they are.
Yeah. Well, man, that's so good, so helpful. And we hope that it was helpful for you too, as you are transitioning into this new season. That's our hope for this podcast, is that this serves as a resource to help you navigate some of the unique challenges that are coming up. So Art and Shelly, thank you guys so much for being on with us. We hope this is helpful.